Hey everybody, Samwise Raridon here of Self-Heal Herbs, and today is my first monthly video about runes, and I'm really excited to talk with you a little bit about what I'm learning about this style of divination. So yeah, just if you don't know me, I am a community herbalist, teacher, and artist living in Ohlone territory, colonially known as Oakland. And I really love divination as a practice in general. I think it's a really awesome way to get another perspective about learning about what we're working with and who we are. I think it's a really valuable introspective and meditation practice. And I like learning from different systems of divination. And runes are one that's in my lineage. And if you don't know what runes are, they are symbols that come from Germanic Norse-ish lineage, and they're symbols that are kind of angular. They look like kind of angular pointed lines in different directions. They kind of look like that. Don't really recommend that book, by the way. But yeah, what I find interesting about the style of the symbols is that they're symbols that could occur naturally, in nature as you're walking, and you could see a different arrangement of sticks or different different things that can kind of look like those symbols. So I like thinking about them as symbols you can encounter just on a walk in nature or in a forest. And yeah, there are 24 runes. Usually they're written on or carved into wood, a little coins of wood. But I have mine on stone that I wrote on it with a paint pen. And yeah, they come in an order. There's a kind of they're an alphabet essentially. A lot of people describe it as a Proto-Germanic alphabet that has different, each letter or symbol has meanings associated with it. And then they go in a particular order. And today we're going to talk about the first one, which I wasn't necessarily going to go in the order of the runes, but so I drew a rune and it happened to be the first one in the order, so I'm okay, maybe they want me to go in the order, and it seems the order is important. And I just want to say too that I'm just beginning to learn about runes. I am a student of my own lineages, and I'm excited to share with you what I am learning. I'm by no means an expert, so I'm excited to begin making these videos as a chronicle of my learning journey. So please forgive me if later on down the road I learn something that contradicts or improves upon what I said before. So buckle up. It's there's endless amounts of learning that we can do in any wisdom tradition, but especially these ones, because they're pretty yeah, you can go really deep with each rune or each symbol. And I just want to take a moment to say too that runes are for everyone. There is this element in the depths of the internet where runes and Norse mythology are being misappropriated and used in gross ways by white supremacists and people who are interested in using that power to say that only certain people can use this or only certain people should have access to power. I just want to say that's bullshit. And also part of why I want to make these videos and part of why I want to explore this realm and explore this style of divination is to try to talk to some of that energy and say hey, there's ways that we can learn about ourselves and who we are and our lineages, and get that connection that we seek without having this this ethos of saying that we have to be better than other people. So I just want to name that and say that that's out there, and to know that if you are researching runes or you're researching this mythology and you run into that element, like, just, sorry, the garbage truck is outside. Because white supremacy is garbage. Just know that, like, yeah, like, mythology and lore and, like, this very powerful way of knowing ourselves has been co-opted by capital, by power, for a long time. Like, that's, you know, a lot of the mythology in, like, the Germanic realms has been co-opted by Nazis and, like, used these and twisted them and, like, you know, like, taken certain elements of the stories and, like, twisted them around so that it suits the purposes of, like, expanding, like, white supremacy and empire. And that's not what this is about. But I just want to give people some context so that when they're researching and, like, coming upon more information, that they're aware. And I think too, part of this study of, like, learning about, if you're someone with my lineages, with, like, Celtic Germanic lineages, that part of the study is to learn more about ourselves and to learn more about how we got here, which I'm really excited to sort of, like, use that as a segue to talk about our first rune, which is Fehu, which looks like this. I'm going to hold up a book. So Fehu, which is about wealth and, like, cattle. Well, mobile wealth, which was associated with cattle back in the day. Yeah, if you've gotten to learn a little bit about, like, the history of money, it wasn't always, like, associated with, like, coins or metal, and before that it had a lot to do with cattle, and, like, people were using cattle as a way to symbolize this exchange of energy. The book Sacred Economics by Charles Eisenstein talks a lot about this, and I think it's, like, a really useful explanation, or, like, exploration of this, like, need to be able to transfer energy between people easily, with a symbol. And, like, now we have, like, you know, just, like, numbers on a screen, which is, like, very, very purely symbolic. And then before that, you know, the gold standard with, like, metal and coins, and before that, like, grain and, like commodities and cattle. So this rune, we'll hold it up one more time, Fehu, right? It actually kind of, what I like about this shape is that it kind of looks like grass, like, it kind of looks like something that cattle might eat. And yeah, it speaks really strongly to this need for circulation, and, like, warning against stagnation, which I think is really interesting. And I think about it too around, like, what was life like in these cultures, and, like, which, you know, I have a hard time wrapping my brain around because I'm definitely in this culture. What was it like before using, like, cattle as wealth, like, as money, you know, like, and because this rune is also about, like, control, and, like, feeling in control. And when it's reversed, so runes can be, like, upright, kind of like tarot, like, it can be, like, upright and have one meaning, and then it can be reversed, or merkstav they call it, and that can have, like, opposite meanings or different meanings. And so when this one is merkstav, it can mean, like, a bunch of different things, but, like, out of control is one of them. So I really enjoy this thought experiment of, like, what was it like before we used money to be, like, really, because, like, essentially this one is talking about, like, the flow and the exchange of energy in the universe. Like, we each have our own personal energy, right, like, as a human, and in fact in these traditions personal energy is called hamingja. It's, like, kind of like your personal energy that you were born with or acquired, and there's, like, the energy in the universe, and so and then there's, yeah, like, all life is this, like, movement and flow and exchange of energy. And so the money becomes useful when it's, like, wanting to have, like, a proxy to exchange that energy. And also, like, why did we need that? You know, like, and I imagine, and that kind of relates to, like, why do we have money at all? Like, why do we have that as, like, a basic underlying organizing principle of our culture? And I think it has a lot to do with fear. Like, I think it has a lot to do with being kind of at the whim of the winds of change and the winds of the movement of this energy, and wanting to be more in control. And yeah, I'm like sort of imagining this picture where, like, you know, like, ancestors being like, I'm tired of starving. I'm tired of being decimated by plagues. I'm tired of, you know, whatever the case may be. Like, I want to have more of, like, a hand in, like, moving these energies around. And I want to be protected. And so, like, that's kind of where I imagine kind of the impetus, or, like, the beginning. And this rune also is about beginnings, and, like, the energy of beginnings, which is because this alphabet is usually arranged in a circle. So it's like, you know, they can be these, like, either little pieces of wood or stone, are talked about, or sometimes talked about in, like, lines, but also in a circle. The beginning is also an ending, which I think is notable. So yeah, there's other associations with this rune, in addition to thinking about, yeah, like the circulation and, like, the moving around of energy. And it really warns against stagnation or blockages of that energy. And that's also something that Charles Eisenstein talks about in his book Sacred Economics, about, like, a huge part of, like, what's wrong. And there's lots wrong with our, like, economic system, basically, that it's, like, you know, racial, carceral capitalism. And in our system, money doesn't die. Like, it doesn't rot or degrade at all. So it can accumulate endlessly. And so we have this massive wealth disparity between people who hoard wealth and people who need it. And what's interesting about the cattle as wealth, and, like, this kind of other way of thinking about, like, money and wealth, is cattle will die. Like, cattle will, you know, just like anything else, just like grain will degrade over time if it's kept in the storeroom and not moved. It needs to be moved, it needs to be tended to, and it needs to be shared. And used, every piece of it, and it will inevitably return to the earth. So that's kind of something that I think is really interesting about this association. And, like, yeah, I think about, like, money, and this iteration of money even being still, like, you know, a modern entity. And again, I have questions and, like, curiosity around, like, what social structures and, like, other ways of imagining life are before that. Because I'm doing a lot of research also in, like, Celtic lineages to support a mentee that I have. I'm researching, like, lore and around, like, wolves in Ireland, and so there's this association with wolves as being kind of, like, evil, and this kind of wolves and, like, snakes as, like, representing blockages, and, like, kind of has that negative connotation. Doing this a lot. So wolves in Celtic lineages, as far as I can tell, are associated with the goddess. They're, like, the consort of the goddess. And they were all murdered. Like, all of the wolves were exterminated from Ireland because they attacked cattle. So here's this metaphor of, like, using, or, like, the cattle being the wealth, right? Like, that's what we need to protect above all else, being at threat from these older, like, goddess ways of interpreting the world, that are wild and dangerous and, like, unpredictable and uncontrollable. So again, we kind of have this theme of, like, control. So yeah, I want to name that, like, and that's kind of why I like learning about runes too, is that it's very multi-leveled, and it's like, here's some interesting things to learn that are, like, that feel useful, and that like that can be applied to our lives now, like needing to circulate wealth. And then also here's this aspect of like, like, you know, here's this history piece around like what is older than the concept of money itself, and it's like, how are people in balance without that? As like a colonizer descended person, I'm like, I don't know. So that's why I really like to do the leadership and the direction of people of color and indigenous folks to answer those more directly. So yeah, a little bit more about Fehu as a rune and its associations. We talked about the control and greed association if it's reversed. And yeah, it has an association with luck. Again, this being in right relationship with the energy movement of the world or being out of it, and having that sensation of luck or like fortune if you're in balance with that movement. It also Fehu has this association with like sending and receiving energy. So again, like using something as a proxy to send and receive energy. And you can also this rune has an association with like drawing or like calling energy to you, and so it also kind of has that like attraction quality to it. What else? Interestingly, this rune is associated with the tower in tarot, which I love. Because it's like, what's more like needing to be toppled right now than like systems of money and capital. And also like that's the tower is when, and like the tumbling of the tower is when we see change and like beautiful growth. And that's kind of like, again, like the goal of working with these symbols and working with this style of divination is to have a greater understanding of oneself and one's context to lead to this personal growth and unfolding. So yeah, and then this rune is also associated with, again, we talked about like the cattle association, but also there's like a mythic association with a deity or I want to say like a cosmic cow in Norse mythology, who is called, I hope I say it right, Oddhumla, which is like this story of this like cow that was present at like the beginning of the world, was formed out of mist and survived by licking the salt off of the rocks. And in fact, the licking of the salt off of the rocks is what formed like the first man, and then from this man and pairing with the giants are like how the gods were born, and then how everybody else was born, and that's a Norse story. So I think it's interesting we get again the beginnings, the origin story. This rune is also associated with the color red, which like in like Germanic-y magic and other things are very much like associated with blood, like the vital life force that runs through us, that runs through all things. Blood is often a proxy of that. And yeah, and then this rune is also associated with plants, and one that I feel really I love that it is associated with is elder. So the elder tree, elder flower, elder berry is considered like a gateway to other realms, like fairy realms or just like other worlds. Is great immune medicine. It like the berries have that quality of like red, vital aliveness. And yeah, it has this wisdom attribute to it. So yeah, so that's a little bit about this beginning rune project and a little bit about Fehu. Yeah, I'm really excited to continue sharing what I learn about this divination tradition, and of course this is all made possible by folks who are patrons of my projects, which include also like a free clinic and classes online that I do, So I really want to just take a moment to thank everyone who is a patron of mine, and yeah, invite folks if they are inspired by this work to join us, because it is a really awesome way to build community around plants and healing and magic. So I just want to say a big thank you to Kathleen Moritz, Marguerite Wilson, Tatiana Koga, Heather Enders, Jax Walter, Melissa Moldovan, Felix Pop, Emily Rose Harger, Sonura Dewa, Anna Fratellillo, Natalia Carballo, Anna Weaker and Lowe, SM Cranston, Monica Lacerda, Karen Ram, Gloria Park, Adrian Wilson, Rose Rothfeder, Nat Chambers, Gaia Essensten, Bonnie Rose Weaver, Brittany Hall, Seedmeyer Minkin, and my mom, Susan Raridon. So yeah, thanks to everyone. I look forward to connecting with y'all soon. Got more videos coming. Next week is like a meditation video, and I look forward to connecting with you in the future. All right, take care.